FM 94, The Dark. It is that time again. It's time to get to know a band we play here on The Dark, and I'm excited to bring back once again Minnesota native, Grammy Award winning MegaDeth bassist David Ellefson to the show. David, thanks so much for joining me once again tonight. How are you doing?
Doing well, JZ, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I want to get into a lot of things here. So let's kick it off first, though, with the reason why I got you on tonight is you have another project, and it's a solo band project, your own, called Ellefson. Tell us more about this project.
Sure. Well, I was never a guy who joined bands to just sort of hang out for a little while so I could go solo. And that's probably pretty evident by my almost 37 years with a little band called MegaDeth that we started back in 1983 out in Hollywood after I graduated from Jackson High School in Jackson, Minnesota. When I'm in, I'm all in, and I'm in for the long haul. But, now after all these years, especially last year, 2019, I had a new book coming out called More Life with Death, and it was my second memoir. And around it, I was out on tour doing we created a platform called Bass Story. And it was basically designed to sort of replace the music store, guitar clinic, bass clinic kind of concept. And take it out into the clubs, have a opening band or two, be able to sell merch, beer, and basically take a clinic and make it feel more like a rock concert rather than feeling all clinical inside of a music store. And while we were doing that, I started to get a really good little backing band around me. And my singer, Tom, who is also my partner with my record label and my coffee company, honestly, I just needed someone to get up and sing a couple of Megadeth songs for me to just play them for fun on the set. And Tom said, "Look, I know like all these Megadeth songs." So he started singing with me. And one night we were in Tampa, Florida, and he goes, "Why don't we go to the studio and write a song tonight? Just record it." And we did. And it produced a song, and we thought initially, we'll put the song out as sort of a digital download to go along with the new book when it comes out, which was July 2019. And as things started to go along, I had this whole vault of demos and ideas and songs that I had written over the years from as far back as about 1993, and they just never found a home. I'm always writing, as most songwriters do, and some things get sort of published and recorded, other things just sit there. And so I put out my first solo record called Ellefson Sleeping Giants. And these were songs that were literally sleeping in the vault, and that started the process. And last year I did pretty much a world tour around that. I went to Europe and South America, performed these songs from that record, and that really got us excited about doing more. And so that set in motion recording a couple of new songs that we just put out, one called Simple Truth, and another was a cover of Post Malone's popular song called Over Now. And now we have a whole record that we're working on. Our aim is to get it out by October this year. And, of course, a lot of things shifting around in the world right now. So we have nothing but time at home to work on getting a record done. So it's all kind of lining up real nice, actually.
You mentioned Simple Truth, and I did some reading. Actually, you did the proceeds to that song to help out the Italian Red Cross. Is that correct?
We did, yes, exactly. Because my recording band and my international touring band are largely made up of musicians from Italy, over by Verona. My drummer, guitar player, and even our mixing engineer, he's also Italian. He lives up in London. So, of course, they all really got affected by this first with the lockdown in Italy. Our guy Alessio, he may have even had the illness, the COVID-19, and so they got hammered first. And I was just in Italy with MegaDeth on the Five Finger Death Punch Bad Wolves tour that we did in January and February. I was in Milan, and it was interesting because it was one of the smaller venues, which really makes for a great heavy metal show. Here's these big bands crammed into this kind of 4,000-seat venue, and I mean, it was sweaty, and everybody's right on top of each other. I mean, it's everything you love about a great metal show. And then, a week later, you go, holy heck, they're like getting locked down for COVID-19. So it's that moment you go, wow, we were just there. So we fortunately have all been okay in all of our groups as we got back here to America. But as we put this song out, I was just like, you know what? This is a moment right now where there's people in need, and we can afford to take the proceeds of that and let's do a charitable donation with it. And it was really it felt good for us to do. I launched my David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation back in 2018. The mayor and the good people of Jackson, Minnesota, were kind enough to proclamate October 9th now as Forever David Ellefson Day in Jackson, Minnesota. So, as part of the kickoff of David Ellefson Day, we launched the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation as a way to continue to bolster, support, and give back to the local music programs inside the public schools, especially for the more rural areas like Jackson, Minnesota.
Absolutely. I know last time we talked about that, and we were chatting about the rural. As you grew up rural, and a lot of times those are the areas that struggle to get support, and that's what the reason for this foundation is.
Yeah, I mean, look, I am a product of the public music school system, and my first experience was my mother and father bought a Wurlitzer organ. This was back in the early '70s. Mm-hmm. I think that was like cutting edge technology back in the day, right? And so I had to take lessons from the church organist who lived, about a mile away from us out in the farm area. And then I took up the tenor saxophone in fifth grade elementary school bands, and then I picked up the bass guitar a couple years later. And all those things. I mean, I played in orchestra band, marching band, pep band. I played bass in the jazz band. So, a lot of my formal education in my formative years as a musician all came from the Jackson schools, public school system, their music education courses. So, it's important that those, to me, I feel that those things stay in the school system as best that we can retain them.
We're talking with MegaDeth bassist David Ellefson. Of course, he has a solo band called Ellefson, and you actually just put out a song here, I believe, over the weekend, and it is a Post Malone track called Over Now, which actually came out, I think it came out in 2018, and I saw something that it was co-written by Tommy Lee from, obviously, Motley Crue. What gave you, I guess, the inspiration to do this song?
As we were touring on the solo tour back in November, when we were in Italy, ironically, we did about a 2-week run of dates across Switzerland and Italy over there in November of 2019. And, we were just talking about songs coming up, and Tom, my singer, he said, he goes, one song that I think we should do that I think would just be really cool. And my wife's a huge fan of Post Malone, as is my daughter. And Tom said, he goes, why don't we do Over Now? And I said, I dig it. I like Post. I love his sound. I tell sometimes people that obviously are not in our industry, in the music business, I said, one of the hardest things for any artist to really cement as their legacy is their sound. And, I reference everybody from, Metallica to Kenny G to Post Malone to Britney Spears, whoever it may be in whatever genre it is. When that artist comes on the radio, you know immediately who it is, and it isn't just from a song; it's their sound, and it's a sound that remains part of their signature throughout their entire career. Frank Sinatra, another one that had that sound, and Post is one of those guys. He is largely created and defined a genre just with his sound, and it's just incredible. So, and he's become a friend of ours, and he's a big metalhead. He's got a MegaDeth So Far So Good So What tattoo down on his right elbow, and so he's a rocker at heart, and so it was our way to just. Obviously, we loved the song. We thought it would be fun to do. We thought we could do a good job of it, and it was just a fun way to just give a nod of appreciation over to our friend Posty.
Well, you did do a good job because I have three teenage daughters that love Post Malone. So they knew that song. And I said, give a listen to this over the weekend, Mother's Day weekend. And they listened to it. And my one daughter was just jamming like, I love this. I love it. So,
Nice.
so you've hit the teenage, at least girl section. They like it. So that's good.
That's good. Hey, I mean that's what it's all about, right? It's and I mean, look, MegaDeth, we're working on album number 16 right now, so we've been obviously going since 1983. So I guess technically we're in our 37th year, starting in June in a couple weeks. So it's pretty cool, that we've been able to be around this long, and of course we've got that signature sound as well, and. My graduating Jackson, Minnesota in May of 1983 and booking on out to California and landing there at that moment in time, that was just an intuition. I was actually jamming with my bands. I think I was 16 years old, so this probably would have been about 1981. And the farm in Minnesota, my dad used to let us take over some of the sheds and the buildings on the farm for my band to move in and play loud and rehearse. And I just remember this feeling coming over me going, I have got to get to California.
Yeah.
Van Halen was starting to be popular. A short while after that, Motley Crue was getting attention. Ozzy Osbourne was getting all of his musicians for his solo band out of Los Angeles, and Quiet Riot and all this stuff. And the instinct just hit me, and I just followed my gut on it, and little did I know when I got there, I'd meet a guy who was just recently a former Metallica member, Dave Mustaine, and he and I, struck up a partnership and created MegaDeth, and here we are all these years later. So, the story's pretty cool, and I just always loved that it always roots for me back home to little old Minnesota.
Yeah. You mentioned Dave Mustaine, and of course he's had some health issues. How is he doing right now? Things are going better for him?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he went to the doctor back in October and was deemed cancer-free. His treatments had worked. He'd gotten through it, and Dave is very, he's very respectful of what that is. That cancer is not something to be messed around with. He met it head on. He got right into it and got into the treatments. Of course, it forced us to cancel pretty much everything last year. On our calendar, which was fine for him, and while he was going through that, obviously it gave me an opportunity to stretch out a little bit and do some of these other musical things. Knowing we were all going to be back together on the stage in January, February to do the MegaDeth Five Finger Death Punch Bad Wolves tour across Europe. And that really, quite honestly, that was the litmus test to see where Dave was really going to be at. Number one, if he was going to be healthy enough to do it, which he was. And, if he was going to, be energetic and feel up to the task. Because obviously coming out of cancer treatments and going right onto a tour bus and taking over the world again as a heavy metal warrior is not, it's a pretty drastic thing, but
right.
I mean, look, one thing about Dave is he's a fighter, and, his music has always been, it's just part of him. It's who he is. And it was really, really a glorious moment when we took the stage in Helsinki, Finland that first night. And he got to tell his story to the audience and to some fans backstage. And I think for all of us, it was really just a humbling, grateful moment that we were back on stage together, able to do that as MegaDeth again.
Let me ask you this question with COVID-19 virus going on now, and let's talk about Dave Mustaine with cancer and that. And he obviously he's vulnerable to this. As a friend, as a bandmate, are you concerned about this moving forward as you guys are obviously hoping to get out and tour again?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, and he lives in Nashville. Most of the MegaDeth operation now is based in Nashville, and it's where we rehearse. It's where we record. We've been making records there since the late 90s. And as we're, getting ready to start recording the next records, it's, we've had to obviously push some things back. We were scheduled to be in by the end of March, but that was right, as things were shutting down. So good judgment said, look, let's push this back a couple of months and let this thing play out and see where we're at with it. So now during the summer here, we're making plans now to get in the studio and start recording. And yeah, I mean, look, as far as touring goes, I mean, there's a lot of parts to that. Live Nation is the promoter for our scheduled tour dates this summer and this fall, and they ultimately have to say, and also again, the local ordinances and the cities and mayors and governors of the states, and I mean there's all kinds of things in place. So things are kind of starting to open up this week. It seems like around the country, and look, I think we all, our feeling is look, we're going to know in a couple of weeks pretty quickly if we're ready for that or not, and just trying to find some balance between, letting our economies flourish and not let people get sick, and yet let people have lives and yet save their life, So there's a lot at play, like you say, and I think for the last couple of months, being able to at least be home and be creative. That's what we're doing, with our David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation. We started an initiative called Schools Out, and it was for me and a bunch of my rocker buddies to get on the Cisco WebEx platform and give start giving some guitar, bass, drum, singing lessons to students who are out of school right now. Instead of sitting in home and being frustrated, or kind of, the uncertainty that looms in the air around so much of this stuff, is, let's get our instruments in our hands and start creating, and let's keep our minds proactive and engaged in music. And since it's a common language for everybody around the world.
Yeah. I got to ask you the question, since you've played in front of thousands upon thousands, even 100,000 fans, do you feel like we'll ever get back to that at some point, or do you feel like the live music experience is definitely going to change?
It's definitely going to change, for sure. I think we've all come to believe that, look, this isn't going to last forever. I mean, there will be some sort of a vaccine or something at some point, or something that will change the course of this. We're not there yet, obviously. Just between the testing and vaccinations and finding a cure and whatever else, comes into that on a medical side. Look, for the next year or so, for sure. I mean, I think the live experience of any gathering, whether it's going to church, sitting in a movie theater, going to a rock concert, whatever it is absolutely going to be changed. And that, I don't know that it means that it'll be like that forever, of course, but what happens is, crisis also creates opportunity. And, look, we've got all this digital platforms and all these things around us on our phones and our computers. And I think it's kind of funny to watch people, putting bands together over the internet and on Skype. And, the truth of it is, we've been able to do this for a long time. It just, we needed a crisis to make it become suddenly important.
Right.
So, if nothing else, we're probably utilizing our technologies maybe a little better potential now than we were a few months ago, and for good things, rather than posting selfies. We're actually using it to do things to help other people and bring people together and create a sense of community. And I think that's a good use of the technology.
A question I do have also with the COVID-19 virus, bands like you that have been established, you guys have got yourself established, but you also have your label group and a lot of up-and-coming bands on that. Are you concerned for those up-and-coming bands because there's this pause now that they can't get out live?
Yeah, I guess a little bit, and I think, look, the youth have always driven the creative environments. They've always been the innovators. They're always, like you were just saying, your teenage daughters, my kids, they've kept you and me young and probably hip, beyond our hip years, just because, the youth are always, they're exploratory, and I think the same thing goes for the methods by which content will be delivered. And, it's fun. You kind of look at the social media platforms, whether it's, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, etc. These platforms are suddenly being engaged for a lot of different things now, that are maybe productive and maybe a little bit more communal beneficial. And I think that's cool. And I think the young people are always going to continue to drive that. They're going to always find the way out of the bubble, if you will. So, look, as always, the future is in the hands of the youth. And look, I'm certainly confident that they're going to recreate what the live music experience is going to look like moving forward. It probably isn't going to be the corporates on Wall Street who are going to figure that out. It's going to be, music has always had to follow where the youth go. I mean, as far back as Elvis and everything, it's when the creative people are putting out content that people like and are engaged with, the business minds have to follow that. It's not the music business. Look at which word comes first. Music is always in front of business.
One concern I guess I do have with the COVID-19 virus is the venues that these live, performances are at. Will they be able to still be around, and how many will be around? Do you feel that's a huge concern?
Yeah, for sure. And and it isn't just even for music, it's for sporting activities. And I think ultimately if we keep an eye on what the sports world is doing, it's probably going to be a pretty good indicator of what's going to happen with music. If sporting events are able to operate in some fashion with social distancing, then maybe music probably follow suit. But, look, yeah, you're right. Look, there's a lot of money in this stuff, and obviously that's definitely a concern because right, wrong, or indifferent, someone has to pay the bills and someone, has to keep the lights on in these venues. So it's definitely a new day for sure. And this one caught us all by surprise. I don't think, 3 months ago at Christmas, none of us saw this one coming.
No.
And yet at the same time, there's a sense of real togetherness, oneness, and community that comes when, it's kind of like Independence Day. It's like we're all fighting with each other until the alien from outer space comes and suddenly Earth unites as one against the alien. And it's kind of the same thing right now where, suddenly, it's not so, remember there's Washington, D.C. was fighting over borders of countries just a couple of months ago, and that seems to kind of have gone away now. Now all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're all in this together, and I think that's beautiful because ultimately, as musicians, you and I both working on other sides of the music business, that's ultimately what we're doing. These airwaves that you and I are speaking over is a platform to bring people together. We can either divide or unite. And music is always something that brings people together.
Absolutely. You mentioned platform, EMP label group you have, and in fact, I was just looking at your list of artists. Currently, we're spinning The Letter Black, A Killer's Confession, Another Day Lost, Sunflower Dead, and of course, Ellefson. And these are up-and-coming bands, and they always need the support. It can't be... MegaDeth started out as a small band and grew up huge. Everybody starts at some point, right? Don't they?
I tell every artist on our label that, at some point I'm on the phone with every artist that we work with, whether it's the introductory phone call that me and Tom have with the artist, because Tom runs the label, he oversees the operations, he's the A&R talent scout ears for the label, but at some point, they bring me, the boss man, on, and my thing is just that. It's to sort of give a big overview and big vision of it. And, my attitude is look, if I'm still at home writing songs and I still get on, planes and tour buses and I'm back in the trenches and I'm doing it and I'm 55 years old and I've been doing this for my whole life since I was 12 years old back in Jackson, Minnesota is when I started putting my first band together. And, it's sort of like, look, if this is what gets you out of bed in the morning, it gets you excited about your life, to live, eat, breathe, drink, sleep, music, then, hey, welcome to the club, But if it's just going to be a sort of I'm going to sit and wait and see, or, I need to, show me the money first, then, dude, you're in the wrong business. And again, like I said before, music business. The music always has to come before the business. And if to me, if you follow your passion and you're really into the music and you're really into your craft and you're prepared to market and promote and be part of all that, then that will always drive it, and your fans will always pick up on that. If it's a cash grab, your fans will pick up on that too.
Yeah. Speaking of music, you're in a lot of businesses, just music, and I wanted to touch base. We've talked about the coffee business, but you've dabbled in more into the film business too. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Our friend Drew Fortier, who is a member of the group Bang Tango for a stretch, and a super creative guy, songwriter, and he created a film called Dwellers, and he came to us about just talking about this film. He and Tom were talking about it, and because he actually interned for a little while, we kind of used him as an intern, which for us meant, hey, do you want to work for EMP, but we don't have enough money to pay you because we're just starting out. So
Yep.
He was kind of, I didn't even call him an intern. He was kind enough to be a seasoned veteran assistant without pay, So he's a good friend in our community, and he brought this film idea to us, and we thought, let's do it. Let's form the Ellefson Films imprint. And, since then, now we've created the Ellefson Books imprint, and Drew and I are actually working on our first fictional book. I've written 3 nonfiction books.
Yep.
I wrote a music business how-to book back in the 90s, and then 2 memoirs in the last decade. And so I always wanted to write a fictional book. I'm a big fan of Lee Childs with his Jack Reacher stuff, and Dean Koontz, and some of these guys, Patterson and these guys. So it's like I always wanted to write a fictional book, and finally came up with an idea, and Drew and I just went with it. So it's coming along well. And so we got to actually probably put out a couple of memoirs and some other stuff. The Chris Poland memoir, Chris being a former MegaDeth member from our early days. He's got a fantastic memoir. I think we're going to put that out under the Ellefson Books imprint as well.
Wow. You got lots of stuff going on, don't you?
Yeah, it's good, man. Again, it's what gets me out of bed. It's the thing that I wake up, my eyes pop open. I'm excited to create, and it's fun to create in business as well as to just create with a guitar or bass in my hand.
Right.
And I find that all of life is creating. And you can be creative in the most mundane job. You can be creative in your thoughts. You can be creative in everything that we do. And so. To me, it's the best way to honor the creator is to keep creating.
Awesome. Hey, David, thanks so much for joining me once again, taking some time out of your day, and for our listeners, too, to kind of get to know you a little bit more, and, of course, a Minnesota native, and find out about your band, Ellefson. Is there anything else that we've maybe missed you that you'd like to say before we go?
No, I guess that's about it. I mean, look, if you're going through Jackson, Minnesota, say hello to my peeps. That's where I came from. They raised me, and I think they raised me pretty well down there in that little town. And Ellefson Coffee Company is housed inside of Cat's Hog Heaven down on 2nd Avenue, which is essentially Main Street. So stop in to get some great barbecue and have a cup of Ellefson coffee while you're there, and say hello to the hometown folks for me, if you would.
That's right. And do you get a chance to come back when they're doing your obviously your David Ellefson Day on October 9th?
Well, I might now. Originally I was, my schedule is around
Right.
tours and various things. But yeah, I mean, look, depending on how things play out this year, there could very well be an opportunity to go back and be with you all in Minnesota. In fact, I look forward to it. Now that you mention it, I hope that actually happens.
That'd be
Thanks
great.
for bringing it up. I appreciate it. I'll put it on the calendar again.
Absolutely. And, of course, Ellefson is the latest project. The song is called Over Now. We're going to play that in just a moment. If more people want information about Ellefson, how can they get that?
Yeah, DavidEllefson.com is the home base for all of it.
David, thanks so much. Wish you the best.
Thanks, JC. See you, man.
Stay healthy. Once again, that is David Ellefson from MegaDeth. Here is his latest song from Ellefson. It's called Over Now.